everyone, welcome to a really cheerful episode of the YouTube upload for our old episodes of things.
Yeah, it is. It's Christmas.
It's Christmas, so
Christmas.
What else to talk about than death?
Well, I mean, you know, with
Christmas
things being
Carol
a bit
pretty much
touch
about
and
death.
go for Ollie at the moment, I thought it was quite apt to re-upload this character profile
Listen.
from episode 158, I think, of the podcast.
Yeah, so listen, if Coronation Street can talk about death right before Christmas, we can, because we're a bit more funny with it than they are, to be honest. So this was...
That's what the Ollie story needs, a little bit more humour injected into it.
few slapstick jokes.
Yeah.
So this was right after Deirdre Barlow's funeral in July 2015.
This is when we recorded it originally.
This is when we originally recorded it, and obviously a lot of things have happened since then. 5 years ago, yeah, we were one of the things we do talk about, which is perhaps a bit inappropriate for 2020, is that we think that there should be a new way of killing people. And unfortunately, 2020 delivered in a really big way.
Did we actually? Were we talking about? Because I haven't listened to this again. So.
We should invent a new disease, is what we said. What innocent young summer.
I think we made it happen.
Sweet summer children we were back in 2015. So yeah, get ready for that and apologise for how inappropriate that is. And we also talk about the fact that there's never been a murder on the Archers, and I still think there hasn't been a murder
on the Archers. So the
Archers,
the other radio show,
like the first soap, really.
I can't hear you say that.
But it's radio, isn't it? So there has been an attempted murder since then, but still no murder in the Archers. And we also say, which is quite funny, that we're fed up with the Carla and Peter alcohol story, and it's boring, and we felt like we're being beaten over the head.
That's amazing.
And 5 years later, they're still going round
changes.
And round. And another thing that we mentioned, we do a little miniature character profile of Archie Shuttleworth. That's worth listening to, because obviously his son George is now on the show.
Yeah, we do a full-on profile.
This is I really enjoyed listening to this. And we also talk about characters who leave a video or some kind of message behind after they die, and Ashley, Alma and Tina were all examples of that. But obviously since then we've had Sinead, who left behind like a video library for any topic you should want to hear about.
Well, that sounds fascinating, Gemma.
So let's listen to it, and then we'll come back afterwards and fill you in on all the death and mischief and mayhem that's happened since, which is, spoiler alert, been quite a lot.
See you on the other side.
Not the other side.
The other side. So with Deirdre's death and funeral on everybody's minds and tongues at the moment, we thought that this week we do a feature discussion about death on the street and funerals as well. So it's going to be a little bit morbid, I think, this discussion, but still quite a big issue that all soaps face on regular occasions. So there's plenty to talk about.
Yes, there is. And apologies in advance if we are disrespectful or you feel that we're not being serious enough, but I'm sure you're used to us by now.
Exactly. So there have been 164 deaths on Coronation Street, which is on and off screen combined. There was 73 on screen deaths so far and 91 off screen.
Now, does the off screen ones, does that just include I heard that?
I think so.
We don't know, but
yeah. Well, there was a list of all of them on Corriepedia, and some of them are literally like, when they had the tram crash, there was a taxi driver that died off screen, and nobody knows who they were.
Included the
so I think if you take
driver
out all of those, there probably would be more sort of notable on-screen deaths. But I mean, some characters, obviously like Deirdre, do get are quite big with the on-screen death, with the off-screen deaths as well. I mean, Deirdre, Betty, Blanche, their characters all died off screen. Elsie Tanner, we got a reminder of a few weeks ago.
Albert Hatlock, Stan, Ogden.
Yeah, so
quite a lot of Barlows died off screen.
Yeah,
Ida, David, Susan.
Yeah, it's mostly the characters who died off screen themselves, or the actors that died off screen themselves, or were sacked, like Len Fairclough. So they usually do like to have the deaths on screen. So I think to be a memorable death in Coronation Street, it's got to be either like a sad death or an exciting death, or sometimes like there's just some kind of weird deaths as well. So I think
the saddest ones, like when Schmeichel died, that actually made me cry. Maybe I can't remember, but
is that number one on sad deaths for you?
Yeah,
that was really sad.
Because it wasn't just Chesney's dog. It was the end of his childhood.
Era. Well, you're such a doggy person, aren't you? Your family have had dogs all their life.
You'd be sad if they had a cat and it died.
That was really, really sad. But for me, out of the ones that I watched, well, I suppose the first death that I watched that was sad when I started watching it was Derek Wilton, because I'd been watching it for like 3 years then, and when he had his because he had a road rage incident, and when he was driving his stationary car, which had a big paperclip on the top, and I thought that was quite sad that he got into an argument with someone and then collapsed on the seat, and that was the first one that made me go, oh, the character's died, it's so sad. But like looking back at Coronation Street from the far past, I think Stan Ogden ranks pretty high up there, and his character was he had an off-screen death because, as we were talking about last week, Bernard Ewins died before the character did, but the scene where Hilda comes back home after the funeral and opens up his glasses case and everything and cries over silent credits, that was proper sad, and I just don't think that the Deirdre one quite lived up to that, and I think even you might be moved by that, to be honest, if that happened to Deirdre.
Vera and Jack, obviously.
Yeah, well, Vera was quite peaceful, wasn't she? Because they came home and she was sitting there in her chair.
Yeah.
But Jack's reaction to her death was really kind of heartbreaking, because he loved her so much, even though he always would tell her like he was fed up with her and everything. That was sad. And Jack's death himself, that was just superbly done. But you were never a fan of that, were you?
Whenever you say, well, when Jack died I loved it, but Gemma hated it, isn't she awful? Isn't she just soulless?
It was so sad. It was sad and happy because of Vera going off with him. Yeah, exactly.
And obviously Hayley, very sad death because she had to kill herself.
Yeah, that was the one in recent memory that probably affected me the most, even though like it didn't come out of nowhere. It had been building up to it for 6 months, hadn't it? They did spoil it a bit with was it Anna and Carla rapping on the door downstairs.
Didn't really like
but the actual moment when she died and she was having the music playing in the background, and that was tragic.
And obviously Alma died as well of cancer, but
that was before you watched it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The worst bit about Alma died, well, she was so like, because she had cancer and she was so, they'd made her up to look really, really sick in her bed. The saddest part of that was that I think she'd had this falling out with Audrey, and then Audrey had heard that she was on her deathbed, drives over to the house to see her, and doesn't quite make it in time. She's like saying, oh, Alma, I'm here now, it's okay. And then the doctor's there saying, oh, she's gone, I think you just missed her. And that was...
missed her, but she'll be back again.
that was utterly tragic, the fact that she missed her final moments, I thought.
Didn't she leave a video though?
I think Alma left a video, yeah.
And I think I saw a screenshot of Audrey watching it.
Yeah, that's always quite sad, isn't it, when you see the characters? We couldn't like Steph have a video of Tina after she died as well, and it's like, oh,
when one of us dies we can listen to these podcasts.
I know, we've got plenty, haven't we, to keep us going. And that was the same with as well when Ashley died, because he died his hero's death in the tram crash, but he'd left that phone message for Claire,
just like Maddie,
which is always a bit funny hearing the characters talk after they died.
I would like you, if I died before you, I would like you to record all of the sounds of me laughing throughout the podcast, stick it in a tiny little speaker and put it on my grave, and then like have it it's like when people walk past, it activates, and then just hear this like strange laughing.
Okay, I'll get that sorted for you.
Cool.
Now, you prefer the most exciting deaths?
I like exciting deaths, preferably murders, so I like Charlie Stubbs being killed.
I think I'll always choose an exciting death over a sad death, and I do get a bit sad with a sad death. Maxine is like the iconic death, isn't it? It's whacked over the head. That's what makes it iconic. I can't think of any other characters who have a catchphrase in a way as their, and it wasn't even her who had the catchphrase. A catchphrase in the dying scene that they should have said at the party. That is so memorable. I suppose all of Richard Hillman's ones surrounding that. Do you remember when he whacked his wife over the head with a spade and she goes into the building foundations? That was brilliant. And then obviously Richard's death himself was probably...
all the villains I've got.
Well, yeah, we made a little list of like exciting deaths, and a lot of them are the villains, aren't they? So if you're a villain in Coronation Street, you're not going to just die of cancer or go off.
You're not going to slip off quietly on a bench or something.
Also, we've got Alan Bradley hit by a tram. Don Brennan drives his car into the viaduct and has a fiery inferno explosion. Richard Hillman drives into the canal, and that was probably the biggest, most remembered death of them all. And back then people didn't think that Alan Bradley's could be eclipsed, but I honestly do think that happened. Yeah, Charlie Stubbs whacked over the head with sexy dancing Tracy's statue. Tony Gordon, the fire of the factory that he then walks into and it explodes.
Brilliant.
That was fantastic. I mean, the only other ones we've got on this list of exciting deaths, I thought that Tommy Harris was quite exciting, and he wasn't probably a villain, but he'd been convinced, didn't he, his daughter Katie to have an abortion, and then she whacks him over the head with the wrench at the garage, and that was really exciting.
And then she kills herself.
And she kills herself because her mum takes the blame. And Molly Dobbs, I love that. That was probably my highlight of the whole live episodes. Molly and Sally in the wreckage, because Molly was in the shop, wasn't she? And then were the rescuers, were the fire people there trying to rescue her, or they realise that there's nothing they could do, so Sally comes in, and then that's when Molly confesses her affair with Kevin, and Sally is just like, so I'm out of it, and then she leaves Molly to die on her own. And I thought that was so harsh, but fair.
Harsh but fair. That's what Molly's final words were.
and Molly was never really a big villain, was she? I mean, she came in as lovely, nice female Tyrone.
Really, like the character up until that final arc really didn't deserve to be.
No, but by gum, she got a fantastic ending. I absolutely loved that.
I don't know whether I'd want people to be with me if I knew I was dying.
Would you be a bit embarrassed about it?
I think I would be. Who was the actress that played Samantha, the witch?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Bewitched.
Yeah, I don't know. I never watched that.
Apparently she had cancer and she knew she was going to die. And she went, "Can you just get out of the room for a minute? I think I'm going to die," or something. I'm paraphrasing. And they all went outside, and then they left her 5 minutes, and then she came back and she was dead. When I read that, I thought, that's good. I didn't go that side. I thought, that's a good idea.
The thing with Molly, though, is she wanted somebody to be with her, didn't she? Yeah. She was like...
But the thing is, though, they can't go with you. That's the thing. If people could come with me, I'd be like, oh, come with me, I'm scared, I don't want to die. But you're going by yourself.
You just you want somebody to be holding your hand, don't you? Is kind of the...
I don't know. I've never died.
But that was amazing. Now, what about some of the
shocking ones? What about shocking ones?
Yeah. Well,
Tina.
Shocking deaths. Tina
being
was
pushed, and then she thought she was all right, and then she got polished off.
That was quite a nice surprise, wasn't it? Because we all kind of assumed that she would. I think we all knew that she was going to be pushed off.
Everyone thought she was going to die from cracking her head or something.
Yeah, but when he goes down and then he whacks her over the head, that
obviously
was good.
Maxine got knocked head in, and then Maddie, that was quite shocking.
That was shocking, and just recently, wasn't it? Because we didn't know that was going to happen. Even though we knew the actress was leaving, I wasn't mentally prepared for her to be caught up in any explosions or anything in that episode.
No, because we didn't know there was going to be an explosion there.
I think thinking of shocking,
and I was convinced, as you all know, that she was going to go off travelling
and find an elephant. Sadly, no. She's riding elephants in heaven.
With Gandhi.
I looking back, I mean, this is obviously before we watched it, I reckon that Martha Longhurst must have been a pretty shocking death, because I think she was only about the third or fourth, maybe not even that character to ever die on Coronation Street, but she was definitely the first main character to die. And obviously back then people didn't have spoilers or anything, people didn't know what was going to happen, and I can just imagine the utter shock of one of the main snug three of Ina, Martha and Minnie just keeling over, and when you watch that clip of her this looking like she's sweating in the table in the Rovers, and she pulls her hat off and everything, that must have been where on earth did this come from when you were watching it? It's I can never trust this programme again. That must have been really, really shocking. And the same with Ernest Bishop as well, because I don't know, but I assume people didn't know he was leaving. I mean, that was in the 70s. I don't know what it was like back then, but when they just suddenly got shot in the middle of the scene, can you imagine now, a character that you didn't know that was leaving, just being shot in an episode?
No. That's why I don't like spoilers.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, it seems like the only way they can really surprise you is to see, how does it happen? Or there's more to it than you thought there was.
I would love them to pull a shock death out of the bag at some point, but you can't do it because of like the spoilers and the Twitter.
And you do feel sorry for the actors as well, because that's their career then just chuck down the pan for you.
If they're going to do it, I mean, the live episode is a time. We already know 2 characters that are going in the live episode, which we're very sad about. We can't talk about, spoiler free.
I don't know that.
Yes, you do.
You know I don't remember anything.
But
Am I weird that I don't remember things?
Yeah, a little bit. Oh. That could be an excuse to get rid of someone. And we were just before we started recording, we were seeing something where Samia Gadi had said that she's not going to be in the live episode. Neither is Jane Danson.
Spoiler.
But they're apparently just starting to get the scripts and film it.
Come out.
But a death in the live episode would be amazing, but just not the characters that we know that are going.
Let's do that, people.
Gotta shock people. Weirdest deaths. Whenever I think of deaths that are a bit weird and memorable on Coronation Street, not necessarily like shocking or sad or exciting, Anne Malone is always my first one. Who was she was somebody who worked at Better Buys or Freshcos or whatever with Curly, and she was like secretly obsessed with him, and he had been in a relationship with her, and then this was like 97 or something, so I think it was at the height of Brian Park's Let's Kill Everybody.
Bad year for deaths.
Yeah, and she was going around trying to plant some evidence in the freezer at Furman's freezers, like she was going to like poison the meat or something that was in there. I would do. And then the security guy comes and closes the door on her, and the next episode you see them opening the door to the freezer, and she's there, just frozen to death, like you know,
like a little statue, like in Shining.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking of The Shining, and I was thinking of Dr. Evil again at the end of Austin Powers when he's frickin' freezing up here, Mr. Bigglesworth.
Yes.
And they're just like, it was just absolutely weird, that death. But it's so memorable.
My favourite weird death is dirty cheese on toast.
Tell us, who do you mean?
Was it Leslie?
Leslie, yeah.
She electrocuted herself making cheese on toast in a toaster by
so sad.
washing it under the tap.
Because she had Alzheimer's.
She had Alzheimer's, and that's not funny. But dirty cheese on toast, as your final words, is kind of amusing.
When I was making a little list of all the different causes of deaths, which we'll come to in a minute, and I showed Gemma this earlier, and it was like, this is how many accidents, this is how many of medical, this is how many of murder, and then I had a little category of cheese on toast as a cause of death. One character,
one person.
I was so sad when she died. I didn't want her to die. I love that story.
That was a good shocking death.
What about I suppose for another weird one, Joe McIntyre, or kind of weird / funny?
No, but that's not weird though. If you spend any time around boats, you know booms are dangerous.
The fact that he went off to go and fake his own death but ended up dying, well, it was quite tragic and ironic, isn't it? And I thought that another funny one was Colin Fishwick as well, because he died of a heart attack in the middle of an argument with John. That wasn't the funny bit. The funny bit was when he
not give him his pills.
I don't think so.
Oh, that was someone else, wasn't it? There was somebody that had pills and he didn't give it to them. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm derailing it.
The funny bit was when John and Charlotte then had to wrap up Colin's body in a carpet and then sneak them round the ginnel. And Colin's dead hand kind of flops out and Charlotte holds onto it or something. And then they bump into Rita, and that was comedy death.
Yeah, so there you go.
There were some of our most memorable deaths. Anyway, so these stats that I was talking about earlier. Now, I went down the list on Corriepedia, and I just took the on-screen deaths into account here because they're too many for me to think about. And I've kind of come up with different categories. So, 23 characters in Coronation Street have died by accidents, which makes up 32%, so it's quite a dangerous place to be as Weatherfield.
Yeah.
18 people have been murdered. That's a quarter of the people that died have been murdered. 10 have died of illness, and that including like cancer, strokes, heart failure and things. Heart attack, 8 people.
So that's 14%. Versus 11% for heart attack.
Yeah, 7 people have killed themselves, 10%. 3 of the deaths have been like infant related, like stillborn or
a baby hit them in the face. No.
Maybe not.
No, 4%.
Two characters had causes of death unknown, and interestingly, they were both called Edna. One of them was like a cleaner at the Rovers, I think, and then she ended up in bed with Dougie Ferguson, and then woke up dead the next day.
You pulled back the cover,
and I don't think it was ever revealed what she was. I can't remember who the other Edna was, but it's quite funny that Edna's, who knows how they died.
Just this mysterious women.
Only 2 people are down as dying of old age on Coronation Street, so that's not the killer, is it?
A lot of them go to live with Auntie Pam.
Yeah, they do. They go off somewhere, don't they? But
what does that correspond to in real life in the UK?
Well, in the list that I said, the most common cause of death in the UK is heart disease. I think that's not very. Can't really make an interesting storyline out of that, to be honest, can you? But
what does that really see?
I don't think that counts as heart attack, but maybe it does.
I don't know.
know.
Lung cancer is the second most common. Is that true?
Yeah, apparently.
Really?
Now that's something that I don't think they touched on Coronation Street, and they really, really could touch that, couldn't they? The internet that never lies.
Oh.
Nobody's died of lung cancer.
This doesn't seem right.
Just go with it. This is according to my source, which I have not quite written down what it is.
Is it that most people are actually immortal? Because that makes more sense then. 3.
Do you think that they would? How many characters actually smoke in Coronation Street at the moment?
Well, Liz does.
Liz, Steve,
Lloyd.
There's not many, is there? I mean, they don't
publicly smoke, because I don't think that.
No, I think like most people on TV and films have like, if a character, they wouldn't bring in a character that smokes unless that's part of it for a really good reason.
Point. Yeah, I think in the future there'll be the same thing, maybe with drinking or eating red meat and stuff. Like everyone knows it's bad for you, but in the old days it was just what you did.
Well, this is why I reckon that they might at some point have a storyline with these e-cigarettes, these vapes, which are becoming so popular among the smokers at the moment. Because
those smokers,
that could have been something that had Anne Kirkbride not died, they could have had Deirdre having a storyline with those e-cigarettes, because that could have been quite a funny story, couldn't it? Because me and you both think they look pretty silly.
I don't think many people admire the look you have when you use one.
No. Dementia and Alzheimer's is apparently the third most common cause of death. Emphysema or bronchitis, number 4, and cerebrovascular disease is at number 5. So
cerebrovascular. What does that mean?
I don't know. I don't even know. But so this is all quite different from Coronation Street. So believe it or not, Coronation Street doesn't tie up with real life.
So nobody dies of old age anymore.
Well, I think this is what's included in this, isn't it? I don't know whether if you die of old age because you've got heart disease. I don't know. I do not know. Suicide was 12th on the list. It's just a lot of the ones on the list that I didn't bother to write down.
Well, see, I've just found quickly. Apparently, last year there were 500,000 deaths in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently that was a fall of 1.1%.
Oh, good. Living longer.
I don't think that's a good thing, though. I think we should have more people dying.
Why?
Because we're getting more people born. Can't you see the problem?
We can fit them in, it's all right.
And it says that infant mortality rate has gone down, which is good. And it says cancer is the most common broad cause of death.
So why isn't that on mine? Oh, no, we had...
No, because... This is a different way of categorising.
Well, I had a different category.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying 29% of all deaths followed by circulatory diseases such as heart disease and strokes, which they put together, and that's 27%.
Well, here's some more stats that I found. So among 5 to 19-year-olds, traffic accidents are the most common cause of death in the UK, and that doesn't surprise me. Have there been many? I'm trying to think of like traffic accidents in Coronation Street, and quite often if they have a traffic accident, they just get injured, don't they? Like when Sophie was hit by the car, and there's not been very many traffic-related deaths. Among 20 to 34-year-olds, suicide and accidental poisoning is the most common cause of death.
I believe that.
Yeah. There were 520...
And also more men die of that.
There were 526 murders last year, the lowest number since 1989, so murder rate is going down. So if Coronation Street keeps having these murders, it's going to
be ridiculous.
Even more ridiculous.
It's going to be like a dystopian...
Apparently your chance of being murdered in the UK is 1 in 1,000.
That's not right.
Why?
1 in every 1,000 people aren't murdered.
Well, I don't know. It says your chance... I got this from lots of different sources.
It doesn't make sense.
I'm not a statistician.
Do you not mean your chance of being... If you're dead, if 1,000 people have died, 1 of them was murdered?
That is probably true. Not 1 in 1,000
Not 1 in 1,000
1 in 1,000 people getting murdered, is it? I didn't think about this when I was making this, so I think you're actually right there. But even so, if we compare that to Coronation Street, the murder rate is a little bit high in Weatherfield.
Also, I disagree with the next point you put, which is 46% of women murdered last year were killed by their former or current partners. But for men, it's friends. And I would say friends don't murder friends. They were never. I say, if they were your friends and they murder you, they were never your friends in the first place.
The most common murder weapon in the UK is a knife, and I'm struggling to think of any Coronation Street character that's been stabbed to death.
They wouldn't use a knife, would they? Did they kill Maxine with a knife?
No, he was as a crowbar, wasn't it? Yeah, it's usually a blunt instrument.
It's because it doesn't look as vicious and.
I think it's
and they can't have blood in the show.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. You can hit someone over their head and just knock them out, but yeah.
That's why they like blowing people up in fires, because it goes all crispy and you don't really bleed very much.
I wonder whether it'd be possible to do a knife. I think if there was a stabbing on Coronation Street, I think people would complain that it was too violent.
I can imagine them
if they didn't show the blood.
No, I don't imagine they would ever have somebody being stabbed, but I can imagine them showing a murderer trying, planning. I can just in my mind I can imagine somebody holding a knife in the shadows, and then they're thwarted somehow, and then they come back later and they do.
I bet that has happened. I can't think, but yeah, okay. Well, according to in Lancashire, which is obviously where Corrie is set, there were 10 murders between 2013 to 2014. So.
Not very many, and most of those were on Coronation
Street. And the most common cause of accidents are traffic accidents, falls, accidental poisonings, and drownings.
Those are all accidents.
Yeah. So, are we okay with the fact that there's so many murders
and should be more
accidents in Coronation Street?
More murders.
It's just a bit silly.
I don't think so.
You got to. There's a fine line between like excitement and drama and just unbelievability.
Every year, I always look forward to a nice Corrie murder. And I'm happy when it happens, because, I'm bloodthirsty and evil. But when you look back and you hear, like, oh, there were, how many people murdered, it just sounds stupid, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's a ratings thing, isn't it?
I know people don't like it, and they prefer the more kind of human drama aspect of the show, which is fine. Everybody likes it for a different reason.
It is good. You're right, at the beginning of the year to think what's going to be the big exciting things, and usually the big exciting things are around in a
murder or something.
A murder or a death
now,
or something.
I think I remember reading, I sent you a link or something about soaps and murders and things.
Oh, yeah.
And just to prove that you don't actually need to have people dying and being murdered to have good drama, no one's been murdered on The Archers.
Really?
There you
go. That's interesting.
Well, how would they even have it? What's happening? I'm being murdered! Who by? I
can't
tell!
It's a radio soap, by the way, for anyone that doesn't know. So, how haven't they killed? We said that nobody's been killed with a knife in Coronation Street, as far as you remember, but we think they probably wouldn't do that. Any other ways that they still could write a different kind of murder in?
A different kind of murder?
No, or death, sorry. A way that hasn't been used to kill off a character yet, that still could be used.
Alcoholism. How do you die of that?
Alcohol poisoning.
What does that mean?
Well, drink yourself to death, you hear people doing, don't they?
It'd be difficult. How would you... That's the thing. Like, a lot of the deaths they've they haven't shown, it's very difficult to show without them just being in hospital. And then it's like, you might as well... It could be anything they've got. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I wouldn't want them to bring back another alcoholism storyline, because we've beaten over the head with Peter and Carla's alcoholism for so long, haven't we?
I would like to propose that somebody should die of rabies.
Oh yes, that's another one. We don't really have that.
We don't have that in this country, but they should go abroad and get bitten by a rabid bat and come back and then die of rabies.
I would quite like to see a poisoning in Coronation Street. I want to see a poisoning, because that certainly is something that would work as a storyline. I think some kind of, isn't it that that's like women will often choose to kill by poison, so they say. So, but the thing is, when we looked at all of those big villains of Coronation Street, it's almost always men, isn't it, that they cast as the big baddies. What have we had? We've had we said that Anne Malone was a villain, but small fry, and I suppose Kirsty as well, but she was misunderstood.
Yeah, I know. Rubbish.
I could imagine if they wanted to get rid of Tracy at some point, to have her poison someone and then get caught out by it.
So are you just imagining them just giving a massive dose and they just die?
Well, mate, either that or over time.
Yeah, that's what I would really like. I think it would be awesome if they had somebody who was poisoning people and they didn't realise that what was going on, and they were just getting sicker and sicker and not really realising, and maybe I don't know whether
there must be other soaps that have done that, but I would be quite interested in seeing that in Coronation Street. Yeah, I did a search for poisoning on Corriepedia, and apparently in 1911, so in the invented backstory, Ivy Makepeace murdered her cantankerous mother Hetty Harris by poisoning her with arsenic, and that was done over a period of time. So it's 100 years later. I think we're due another long-term poisoning on Coronation Street.
How do you do it these days? You can't just go buy arsenic.
Well, Hayley managed to get some poison somehow.
Make them eat apple seeds.
Hayley managed it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know.
I don't know.
That's my vote.
I guess you can give them pills. And also, there was a very famous storyline in EastEnders where somebody died of HIV/AIDS.
Oh yeah,
because they do that now. No, because I don't think that people, because they've got very very good medication now, haven't they?
Yeah.
What new diseases are? I don't know. What new things are people dying of?
Well,
I think alcohol is going to be a massive thing because people are drinking way too much now.
I'm still waiting for everyone to drop dead of CJD.
Yes. Oh my God! Don't say that. We're all going to die. We all grew up in the 80s eating dodgy burgers out of vans, so we're all going.
We didn't all, sadly. Me and you did. That's the worst bit.
I don't even like burgers out of a bloody burger van.
Our mums, what they like, giving us those.
My mum wouldn't even let me eat Mr. Whippy because she said it wasn't pasteurised, but she let me eat a burger out of a van.
Anyway, this is getting a bit depressing about thinking how we're going to die.
I think it's what do you mean? I'm not going to die.
I think it's quite interesting how many deaths they have in Coronation Street now compared to previous years. Because this is my next set of stats. In the 60s, there were only 5 deaths in Coronation Street. Same in the 70s. So out of the first 20 years of Coronation Street, only 10 people died. In the 80s, 3 people died. So like half of Coronation Street's life, we've had
that was like about
13 people die.
Less than a third of all the deaths.
Yeah. In the 90s, that rose to 13 deaths. This is on-screen deaths again, by the way.
Are these major characters or just anyone?
Oh, mostly major characters. In the first decade of the new millennium, 26 deaths. And in the what are we calling these? The teens, whatever decade we're in now. Bring on the 20s. 21 people have died.
And it's only 2015.
I know. Surely we are going to catch up because we're almost caught up to the last decade already.
Yeah, we're going to. I would be surprised if by the end of the decade there were about 35
deaths.
And so far that's 29%, and last decade was 36% of the total number of deaths. So it's 50% in the last 20 years. Over 50%.
And the deadliest year I found was 2010, where there were 9 deaths on screen plus 2 off screen. This is when they had the tram crash, of course, so that helped boost the numbers a bit. Mm-hmm. But people will say that soaps are getting a bit too unrealistic, and they're not as nice and gentle as they used to be.
Don't forget that time there was that terrible milk van crash up our road, and all those people died. About 50 people died. So I think that's.
No, so things like that don't happen in real life, do they?
Or how about that time that the hot air balloon fell out the sky and landed on that pool of people?
Making it up.
And they all drowned. That was terrible.
Do you think that deaths would be a bit more effective if they were stopped making things up? Or that time that the bouncy castle
flew through the sky.
You're making things up. This sounds a bit Emmerdale-ish. Do you think that... Do you think they'd be more effective if they happen less often, or do you not mind?
They probably would be more shocking, but that you can't ever de-escalate, unfortunately.
That's the thing. If you go back to like no deaths in a year or whatever, it's like
why are they all still alive?
Those are the episodes that people like watching the most, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
sorry, but it's true. People like most viewers like deaths and drama.
And the thing is, as well, I suppose, the cast these days is so much bigger. Yeah. If in the 1960s they'd had 21 deaths, that would have been killing off every member of the cast, probably.
And let's not forget there are more episodes per year now.
Yeah.
By a lot, so.
I still think it's probably a bit disproportionate, but...
Well, yeah. Considering nobody's died of heart disease, and that's like apparently the leading...
Well, not many people have, yeah. But...
What we need is some kind of zombie apocalypse. That'd be quite good.
They should have a little spin-off, shouldn't they?
Like they did with Big Brother, where they had what was it called? Dead Set. Yeah. That was awesome.
So, do you think that characters react realistically to deaths? Because, I mean, if you're living in a world where literally everybody in a street, where everybody knows somebody who's been brutally murdered or died unexpectedly or whatever, I mean, there's only so much realism you can have by the characters' reactions. I think the funerals are always sad, but they're a pretty resilient street, aren't they? They do kind of get over deaths in Corrie fairly quickly. There's a few characters that don't, like Simon seems to have been properly affected by all the trauma he's been through, but like Gail, she's had how many husbands die or whatever, and she's just like, oh well.
Yeah, but okay.
I suppose the human condition is that you
get over it.
Yeah.
There's that, but yeah, like I was just about to say, like most of the people I know have experienced maybe average to less than average number of bereavements in their life, because we're young, so we don't know.
Well, I know I barely know anyone that's died. I've only been to like 2 funerals in my life.
But then you have people who seem to just have tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, and you would never know unless you spoke to them, because they've done like studies about general happiness, and they've proven that on the downside, really amazing things happening to you, like winning the lottery or something, your average level of happiness will return to pre-event levels like 2 years afterwards. But conversely, on the plus side, bereavements and things like that, deaths of spouses and other terrible things, on the whole, unless you develop depression or something, around 2 or 3 or how many years, you will return back to your base level of happiness. So everybody has their basic level of contentment in their life.
I suppose it'd be a bit too much like EastEnders if everyone was permanently depressed about people that died, wouldn't it? It'd be a bit too miserable. I still thought another one, Tina, when Joe died, she got probably depressed, didn't she? She locked herself away. That was a bit of a different reaction to it. That was realistic, maybe.
Yeah, that was good, but you can't have them all doing it.
No. It's good. Quite often what they'll have, won't they, is that they'll have the families kind of reacting to the death and the funeral and anything, and then they won't show that family again for a little bit until a certain amount of time has passed. Next time they're in, it's like they've got over it. So I suppose that's a good way of doing it as well.
It's like what happened with the Nazirs, isn't it?
Yeah. Can you think of any characters that have been killed that shouldn't have been? Like, you wish they'd been written out another way? Because I always think that
Maddie. I really wish they hadn't killed Maddie off.
Yeah. She was such a promising actress, and she really, really could have come back, couldn't she, in a few years if she'd wanted to leave. I think that they're going to regret that. I suppose it's similar with Tina as well, because we were sick of Tina by the time they killed her off.
Yeah,
but looking back on it, I'm really thinking, she could have gone off and done other things and then come back into Corrie. And that would have been a really big name signing. But I don't know, but people don't really, do they? Because like Karen McDonald's not come back, Becky's not come back. But they've left the door open for them at least.
That's the funny thing, though. I think out of everybody, I think it's far more likely that she wouldn't have... Becky's... What's her name? Actress? Whatever her name is. Wouldn't have come back. She won't come back now, I'm pretty sure.
No.
But they left the door open for her. Whereas... other actresses or actors that have gone who died, I don't think.
I suppose that does tell you something about how appreciated the actress is. If we kill you off, then good riddance in a way, isn't it? What about I didn't. I mean, going back to Derek Wilton, I kind of wish they hadn't killed him off because that was a bit tragic. I'd rather that he and Mavis had left, because she went off to Cartmel not long afterwards, and I kind of like the idea that they'd gone and retired somewhere together. Yeah, that's
the thing. It's nice to imagine that they stayed together, or
because they were such a lovely couple. And John Stape, I wish they hadn't killed him off. Do you remember when he jumped off the building that one time, and then his body was disappeared, and I was like, oh, he's going to come back one day, and he did, but then they killed him off. And I think it would have. He's definitely a villain-ish that could have come back and made an interesting storyline, because like we've now got Fizz and Tyrone looking after Hope, but he could have come back and tried to get.
I don't remember he died. I forgot that.
Yeah, he was in a car crash. He could have come back and maybe wanted to get to know Hope or something, and because he was no way in the same league as Tony Gordon or Richard Hillman or anything in the villainy stakes, was he?
No, that's true.
We can't talk deaths on our feature discussion without talking about the character who's most related to death, which is Archie Shuttleworth. He was played by Roy Hudd about 10 years ago or so, wasn't he? He was in 2002 to 2003 was his main appearances, but then he came back for a couple of other funerals as well. He was in 117 episodes all in all. Were you a fan of Archie? Do you remember Archie?
Yes, I do.
What was his quote?
Something about knowing how tall people were to go in a coffin. Though coffins are made to measure, which they aren't.
I think that the fact that he had that catchphrase, because he'd always look up people and be like, 5'9", I'm not wrong, it'd be the first thing that he'd say to people.
Don't they just make them all and then you stuff you in there?
I don't know, but in any case, that was a really funny little quirk that he had. So, mini character profile of him: he was the local undertaker at Shuttleworth's independent funeral directors on Tile Street, and he was brought in as like a companion to Blanche, and then they started dating. He made Blanche jealous, though, by getting Audrey to dress the hair of some of his deceased clients. That's like Coronation Street to do that. One of the things that I really liked about Archie was when the whole Richard Hillman saga was going on, and Richard was trying to make Audrey think that she'd been going mad. Archie was the one that stood by her during that, so that was quite cool. And he left in 2003 when he proposed to Audrey, but she turned him down. But he did return for Mike and Blanche's funerals. So he was a bit like Fred Elliott, wasn't he? Just like old, kind of larger than life kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the actor's still doing, but I'd really love to see him back one day. I don't know whether he will
playing another part.
No, he wouldn't be able to play another part. He'd have to come back as.
I didn't mean in Coronation Street.
Oh, in another thing. Yeah. Well, some people do, don't they? He could have come back for Deirdre's funeral.
Yeah.
Because he said that's a big enough one to come back. I wonder whether he was offered to it. So, memorable funerals is more difficult to talk about, isn't it? Because it's usually the cause of death that people remember the most. I mean, the very first funeral in Coronation Street was Martha Longhurst's when in 1964. That was the first time that they'd had a graveyard scene, and interestingly, the second time that incidental music had been used in Coronation Street. Because they never use like music over the backgrounds, really, do they? But they did back then every now and again. Do any funerals stand out to you, or is any?
Quite a lot of the time, people will use a funeral to berate others for things, and have arguments at funerals. So
there's quite often a punch up in a funeral, isn't there?
There was 1980 when Daisy. Renee Hibbert died. She was in a driving lesson and she got hit by a car, and her mum Daisy accused Alf of killing her at the funeral. And then you already mentioned the Hilda breaking him down in 1987.
Hilda's Stan's funeral. Yeah.
And then 1989 you had Ivy being upset at Gail because Brian, she wanted him to have a Catholic funeral but he didn't get one. And then 1997, Derek's funeral.
Yeah, I want to say about this because I was saying earlier that Derek's death was one of the first ones that I remember watching when I watched the programme, and that had Norris in as well at the funeral, because Ken was supposed to be doing a speech or doing the eulogy, and then Norris kind of pushes past him to say this really insensitive eulogy, not thinking about Mavis's feelings, and he kept on calling Derek Dirk, which was his like little nickname for him. And then at the wake, Mavis hears that all the neighbours were just making fun of Derek, really, and saw him as a figure of fun, and she did this great speech where she says, well, I love him and he was a wonderful man and you can all get out, and she threw them all out of the wake. So that was quite a memorable one for me. Now what about Maxine's funeral? That was quite good, wasn't it, as part of the Richard Hillman saga?
Richard Hillman was first introduced in Alma's funeral.
Yeah, I think lots of people forget that he was supposedly Alma's cousin, although whether that was true or not, I don't know.
Now Maxine's funeral was in January 2003, and Richard has to go, even though obviously he killed her, and nobody knows this. And so Gail makes him go, and he's behind the family, Ashley, Fred, and all the Peacock family, and freaking out about this. And Audrey realises, she sees him, and she, in her mind, she puts everything together, and she tells Norris that Richard tried to kill Emily, and Norris says that's not possible because he was in the Rovers. And then up goes Derek. I don't know who.
Derek is Maxine's dad.
Goes up, tries to read a passage and becomes overcome with emotion, and Richard has to go up and take over the reading. And then he goes up and he says, I've got a confession. But then we have an advert break, and he says, something about supporting Ashley in his time of need. And Audrey thought he was going to confess to murdering her.
But doesn't she then?
Well, then when Maxine's being lowered into the ground, Audrey snaps and says, oh, you did it, you killed her, and Archie has to calm her down. And then everyone's like, oh, Richard, you made such a great speech.
That was brilliant. I think I remember watching that and thinking that this is going to be the time when he's going to confess, but no, it was a little bit longer until it was found out. I thought that...
Well, do you remember we were talking about Bev and Audrey having this argument over Fred?
Yeah.
And then, so at Fred's funeral, Bev actually wears the wedding dress to the funeral, and she spent the whole time giving Audrey evil looks.
Yeah, and that was also the funeral when Jamie Baldwin had a kiss with his stepmum Frankie as well, which is, I suppose, sometimes during the funeral episodes they'll have something else happening, like in the background or whatever, won't they? Because they know that lots of people will watch the funeral episodes. They'll try and put all the exciting stuff together.
Now, there were lots of funerals in 2010, as we know, because we mentioned earlier that a lot of people died then. So Blanche died. So she had her funeral, and that was when Tracy came back.
Yeah, because she'd been in prison.
In the previous episode, that was her first appearance since 2010, and she had to ask to go to the funeral, and then she has an argument with Steve about him wanting to change Amy's name to McDonald.
Yeah, and she ends up getting bundled back into the police car. That's quite good.
Also, we had Joe's funeral, which Tina and Gail had a falling out, and Tina had banned Gail from going, but she went anyway. And then Tina gets overwrought and walks out during the service, or runs out, and so Gail goes up and gives a speech about her loving Joe, and Tina accuses her of covering up what happened in his death and phones the police, and then at the wake Gail gets arrested.
This seems to be quite a common theme, doesn't it? People accusing people of things in funerals, really, whether it's true or not. Punch-up wise, Molly's funeral was always a good one for me. That was the same year as well, because obviously Kevin had been having this affair with Molly, and then Tyrone finds out about it, and he punches Kevin actually into the grave.
Right on top of her casket.
Right on top of the coffin, so that was quite a good one. And then at Tina's funeral last year, was it Peter and Rob had a punch-up as well?
Yes. They had
Sunita's funeral was memorable in a way, just because over the past few years they've started showing different types of funerals, because we hadn't had a Hindu funeral before, so that was quite interesting to see them dressed in white and everything. Then we had Cal's funeral this year, which is very, very different to any funeral we'd seen on Coronation Street. That was really interesting.
And then the humanist funeral,
for Hayley, because she's got probably the most memorable coffin in all of Coronation Street, hasn't she?
Nice floral coffin.
And also that was a bit of a drama funeral as well, because Roy originally refused to go because he was still so upset and annoyed that Hayley had killed herself.
So annoyed she killed herself.
But he's eventually coerced into coming, and he looks like he's going to make a big scene of it, because he goes out there and everyone's saying how perfect Hayley is, and he's going, no, she wasn't. And then there's the advert break, and then afterwards he's saying, she was just a normal person, she was just like you and me, and we were so good for each other. And he did a lovely speech, and this is when he does his we were a perfect duet, just like this song. So that was quite a nice one. But, I suppose those are some of the most memorable funerals.
Yes.
So let's finish off this bit with a bit of list of feedback about favourite deaths and funerals and things. So read out the first one then, Jem.
Karen says, my favourite death in recent memory is Mike, when he died all confused in Ken's arms.
I can't believe we didn't mention that, yes.
I was in bits for hours after that one. As for funerals, what gets me every time is the name of the person spelled out in flowers. I've never seen that at Canadian funerals, and it gets me every time.
Is that a British thing to do? I don't know.
Well, yeah, it is. I've seen lots of people do that.
I was expecting Deirdre to have one that said Mam.
Yeah, Mam.
But she didn't have one, did she, this week? She didn't have Deirdre spelled out in flowers, I don't think. Mike Baldwin's death, though, like you said, Karen, I can't believe I didn't think of that one before, because
you're not getting your name spelled out in flowers. It's too long.
Mike was obviously had his Alzheimer's, but what killed him was when he escaped from hospital and died of pneumonia on the factory streets, and the fact that his long-time rival Ken was there, like cradling him as he died, and then
he thought he'd won.
He thought he's saying, I got you. I got Deirdre's mine. Deirdre loves me.
Yeah.
And then he dies. Yeah, that was really tragic, actually. We got a message from Amy, who says she's just watched the episode where Bev tells everyone that Deirdre's died. This Corrie death has affected me the most. When I first heard Anne Kirkbride had died, I was devastated. I've watched her and Corrie my whole life, and it felt like she was part of my family. These scenes are just so painful, because I know it's just a soap, but the grief is real. All the actors knew and loved her, and this is her Corrie goodbye. Very well done and very moving.
Christina says, funerals always seem really straightforward in Coronation Street. They never seem to take much arranging. In my opinion, Deirdre's funeral was really quick. I'm guessing the writers didn't want to drag it out any more than it had been. Like I pointed out a few weeks ago, nobody ever seems worried about the cost of funerals. I think that after the initial grief, how much a funeral is going to cost is a major worry for most people. Apart from cows, I can't think of another wake that hasn't taken place at the Rovers. It's hard to remember the wakes because they all seem to blend into one.
They do really, don't they? There's always things about, can we eat the food or whatever at wakes? I don't know how many ways you can do that. Yeah, I was quite surprised at how quick Deirdre's funeral is. I mean, it sometimes is maybe a week after the death, but this one was like less than a week. It was all arranged, considering that she wanted a big funeral and everything. It all seemed to happen very quickly, didn't it?
As far as I know, given my recent experience, it really does depend. The whole thing depends on when you can fit the service in. And unfortunately, there are peak times for deaths, which is particularly around like winter time when quite a lot of old people die. So it's like when Nan died, we either had to have the date that we selected, which is about 3 weeks after she died, or it would have been another month after that, because there were so many funerals that had to take place.
I think with Deirdre's death, they did want to kind of have a little bunch of this is the Deirdre death episodes together, didn't they? Like the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, and that's kind of all together in a set. And now let's get back on with the other storylines again. So even if it wasn't completely realistic, I suppose
I think also when Joe died, remember I told you, because I was looking up about it, Joe McIntyre, it took them about 6 weeks to.
Well, his
death was being investigated.
Yeah.
But then once they had the body released, it only took them a week to organise the
Well,
funeral.
but people didn't know that he died straight away, did they? Because his body ended up getting washed up at the side of Lake Windermere a little bit later, and Tina had been accusing Gail of murdering him and everything, and it was only then that it was found out. Last comment is from Tyler, who says, I think Deirdre's death has been one of the biggest in Corrie because they made such a big thing of it, which they should. She was one of the longest serving characters and a British icon. Her funeral has affected many fans across the world, and personally, I loved the death and funeral episodes, especially when Rita was in it. Other funerals I think have been done correctly are Tina's, Hayley's, Jack's and Blanche's, because they were much loved and popular characters. I also enjoyed the memorial thing they did one year after the tram crash, when Ken made a speech. I remember, if I'm thinking of the same thing as you there with the tram crash memorial, was that when they had the snow and then Tracy comes in and ruins it? Do you remember that? Because she'd been away, and then she comes in and says, oh, the best Christmas gift since Jesus Christ or something, it's me, Tracy, and I think that spoiled it a bit. But
did you think?
They had a nice poem there, up until her coming back. I thought that was quite a touching moment. So, that is death on Coronation Street.
Such as death on the street.
So quite a lot of memorable ones, and I'm sure there's more to come.
Yes.
But we've given a few ideas about different ways they could kill people in the future. Poisoning.
Poisoning is what we want. We want
rabies for Gemma.
Rabies or poisoning or both, maybe. Maybe the bat bites someone who's been poisoned and dies.
Maybe. So if anyone else has got any comments or
snake bite,
death and Coronation Street, I know it's a bit morbid, but
snake bite.
Okay.
We have adders in this country. Let's have an adder.
Okay, let's try that then.
Should we move on to the cabin?
Let's move on, because that was all a bit depressing, really. Let's talk about happier things.
Shall we?
In the cabin.
Oh, what a pleasant topic that was. Has anybody stuck it out to the end? Is anybody listening to this bit? I don't know.
We all get a bit depressed by the end of it, but listening to it, I wasn't very depressed. It's also funny when we were talking about vaping, we were calling it e-cigarettes, because 5 years ago it wasn't as popular as it is now. Talking about smoking.
Do they not call them e-cigarettes anymore? They just I think
it's mostly just vapes.
Okay. Anyway, so that was 5 years ago. So, Gemma, what have you been some of your favourite deaths on Coronation Street since then?
So many deaths.
Just looking down, so we've got the Corriepedia death list here, and the number of deaths.
CoronationStreet.fandom.com.
Thank you. The number of deaths currently is at 195. As of the time of recording, methinks that might be changing somewhat soon.
So we're recording this on the 24th of November 2020.
Yes.
Right before we believe the imminent death of young Oliver.
It seems so. We're also wondering, is anybody going to not make it through the 60th anniversary?
What's his name?
Oliver Battersby.
That's it, sorry.
But I don't think, sadly, they're going to hit the golden 200 throughout the 60th, unless we're in for a bit of a bloodbath, but you never know.
I don't think they're going in for I think they're doing an alternate. Every 20 years we kill people, and then the other 20 years we're like, oh no, the street's under danger.
Okay, so we've got to come back in 10 years for the next...
I think this episode, this anniversary is kind of a Prince Charles kind of one, where he's worried about architecture and destroying heritage.
So come on, tell me, what are some of your favourite deaths that we've had since recording?
Before this happened, we had no inkling of the absolute destruction that Pat Phelan would bring to the show.
We didn't, did we?
He's been responsible for, not a huge number, but still a percentage.
He had
overall
been in the show when we recorded, hadn't we? But he hadn't killed anyone yet. So we had Michael Rodwell die, watched on by Pat Phelan, Vinny, Andy, obviously, Luke Britton,
These were all really kind of dark and gritty deaths, weren't they?
Yeah.
We had Pat being stabbed to death by Anna Windass. So these were all really violent deaths. We had
there's been a lot of violent deaths.
Yeah, Callum and Kylie before then in that massive storyline with the Platts.
Yeah, in fact, I've put Kylie and being cradled in David's arms as the cover image to this YouTube upload, because I think it's a quite iconic picture from the last 10 years of the street. Like, if you think about standout deaths in the 2010s, then Kylie's was definitely up there, as was Aidan's, which is obviously an off-screen death. We didn't get to see what happened, and it was still left as a bit of a mystery, or it doesn't matter how he took his own life. The fact that he did, and it was about the consequences that had on the street, and the reasons that he did it and decided to take his own life without letting on to anybody that how he was feeling. So there have been some huge deaths in the show since then. Too many? I don't know. I mean, it's accelerating
a lot more than you would
fast.
think. So
though not this year. We haven't had anyone die yet this year, have we? Apart from Dennis Tanner off screen.
Yes, so off-screen deaths since we recorded include Tony Stewart, who died of a heart attack. Mrs. Moss, I don't know who that is. Drew Spellman, Summer's dad, who died of heart failure. That's why Summer has been adopted. Lara Cutter, who was really good. Story.
She was related to the
grooming storyline.
Yeah.
Katie Armstrong, who died in a car crash in Portugal, so that Chesney and Gemma could get it on. I don't know. Jackie Dobbs, who died so that we could have Evelyn. A lot of people sacrificed themselves so that we could
storyline
facilitate.
purposes. Yeah, I mean, looking at Drew, Aidan, Jackie. That you're right. That is storyline purpose sacrifices. Steph Mulvaney, who was, I think, the person that was
died because
she had too much kale instead of chemo.
Yes, we also had Sylvia Goodwin, who died because they wanted to get Evelyn in the show.
I don't think that was the exact reason. I think it was more to do with Roy finding out about his past.
Yeah, exactly.
So thanks to Sylvia's brave sacrifice. Nina and Richard, Roy's new secret brother, that was really tragic death, because I loved that character. He was just in it for such a short amount of time.
Also, John Brooker, who's Emma's dad, who died of stomach cancer, so that Steve could be Emma's real dad.
Yeah,
how lovely
look at all these guys
Joey
the guys and girls
Buchanan,
that took one for the team.
Murdered by Ronan Truman, just to add to the stakes, and Dane Hibbs, who died of a drug overdose, and that is Shona's ex.
Yeah, that's right. Talking of stakes and Roman Truman, I marry them together by saying that was quite a great death, wasn't it? When he got impaled by that fence, so we had like a stake through him. Ronan did.
Yeah.
And Dr. Ali basically killed him and got away with it. And he is in prison at the moment, as far as we know, but that was just for beating up Gary. I think he's still got his initial crime unpunished.
Do you think that when he comes out, he can join up with Todd and create we used to be professionals, but we are now legally not allowed to practice our profession, but if you want to come to us off hours,
and then soon
I'll take a bullet out your bum.
Everyone's going to forget about our dodgy past quite quickly, which is what Todd's going through at the moment. We've had Rick Neelan, Lewis Archer, so a couple of baddies killed off, which seems to be the way, so watch out, Jeff.
Well, I mean, we also had the tragic death of Rana, which was and Sinead, two young women taken far before their time.
This is just
for tear-jerky purposes. We also had Derek Milligan, who died because Christmas Day would not be complete on actually last year, 2019, we had 2 deaths on Christmas Day.
Yeah, Derek
and Robert, who got shot by Derek before he fell off the top of the Helter Skelter at the Weatherfield Winter Wonderland. I don't think Coronation Street is going to follow that up with any more deaths this Christmas. I think
maybe not.
This Christmas
is going to be
This Christmas is going to be, I think, a really sweet family.
I hope so. They really should make this a happy Christmas.
So I think there have been, since we did this, so many more deaths than you would think. And it's weird because I usually kind of think, it's not as exciting as it could be. There could be more deaths, but I think there's probably enough.
I think you're right. I think there has been. I mean, just comparing the first half of the 2010s decade to the last half, it's definitely ramped up an awful lot.
I mean, part of that is K.O.'s fault.
Yeah, she's the true axeman of Coronation Street,
she
isn't
really is, yeah, because she didn't axe loved characters, did she, like Brian Park did?
Well, I mean, Rana.
She did.
Oh no, she wasn't responsible for Rana, was she?
But
that
she
was
did.
That was not Stuart Blackburn, Ian McLeod victim. But yeah, I mean, she came in there. She wanted to, kick up a storm, and came Pat Phelan. So,
some really dramatic deaths.
And also, they have gone there with the child deaths, haven't they? We've had Rory, and obviously soon to be Ollie as well.
Poor Steve's children. Watch out, Emma. Watch out, Amy.
It does just make you think, where could they go next, and do we really want them to?
No, please, thank you very much. I don't like medical ones at all.
I don't mind the odd, exciting shooting here and there, but I've certainly had my fill of tragic, drawn-out, illness-related deaths for quite some time now. Let's have a breather from that.
Let's just pretend that Weatherfield's really got tip-top doctors and they don't lose anybody. No man left behind, please, in 2021.
Anything else to add about Corrie's deaths in the last 5 years before we call it a day from here?
I mean, yeah, there's nothing really to add. Except now we've got George Shuttleworth, who's
oh yes, very true. So I mean, if he wants to be kept in business, we may be having to lose a few more people in the imminent future. We know that the actor is on a 12-month contract at least, so I think he's going to be digging some graves at some point in the next 12 months.
I don't think undertakers dig graves.
He's going to be leading some hearses in the next 12 months. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening. If you stuck this through to the bitter end, unlike the characters we've been talking about today.
Well, they did stick it through to the bitter end because they're all dead.
Oh, okay. Well, so some of them gone before their time, which I hope you didn't, listeners. Your time is now. You can
your time's up now.
Press the pause button or go and listen to something else for a change. I'm talking about. This isn't like if you listen to the end of this recording, you're going to get a phone call from Sadako and say,
days.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
right,
we're waffling.
No,
we're done.
Listen, that was deaths on the street. Who knows what's to come apart from Oliver? We know that probably. So we hope that you found this interesting, if a bit macabre, and we'll see you next week with a different YouTube upload.
Bye.